How about conference realignment? Let's throw that one in there. You got 2 new schools joining next season, and look at this. The proposed permanent opponents for your Missouri Tigers look like this: Arkansas, Oklahoma, and Vanderbilt. What are your thoughts on these 3 potential permanent opponents?
Well, I don't have nearly as much clout as Coach Saban, so I'm not making any comments on the record. Like I know for sure if that's the 3 proposed
Mhm.
teams or not, and I'm not going to complain or say excited one way or the other. I just know that we're in a situation where we're going to have to figure out a way to play 9 games. My biggest challenge is that we figure out this sooner rather than later, because what people are not talking about is that if you have 5 away games in the SEC, you better make sure that your non-conference schedule doesn't have 2 away games, or you're going to be looking at a season where you have, 7 away games, right, and just 5 home games in the SEC. And if you're not careful, and you have one of those permanent crossover games like Clemson plays South Carolina and Florida State plays Florida, every year that game's alternating. So how do you make sure that that schedule matches up so you're not 6 home, 6 away? So there's a lot of complexities to this system and what we're trying to accomplish, and the sooner we can provide clarity, it's not going to be perfect for everybody. Nothing is, all right. And so we can just throw that out the window, like, well, I don't like these opponents or I don't like those opponents. Well, when you play a 9 game schedule, you're not going to like everybody you have to play. I mean, it's not possible for everybody in that room to walk out of there and say, well, that's perfect for us. That's just not how it's going to be. So uh, you hopefully they do the best they can, and I know this: it's still going to be the best conference in college football, and it's still going to be really challenging. And Mizzou better really recruit at a high level, and Carl better help me in St. Louis if I'm going to have any.
The pressure's on, Carl.
Coach, what would be the best way for the SEC to handle these 3 permanent opponents, and how do you manage the not knowing of it at this point? You just talked about if you don't know, you could possibly schedule 2 away games, and that can put you in a bad situation. How do you manage the not knowing?
Well, here's the thing. I'm a proponent of the 9 game schedule. I think when you look at the SEC and competing in this league, and especially at a place like Mizzou, the more continuity, the more people that you have to compare yourself against, the more you can raise up to the challenge. So whatever the 3 teams that we play, that's who I'm going to compare ourselves to continually, right? And that gives us a chance for success. If you're playing 1 permanent and 7 teams are constantly rotating on and off your schedule, it's going to be hard to try to create any type of continuity of this is my competition. And then the other thing is, I couldn't. I've been fortunate. I coached at Auburn. I can't imagine if I'm at Auburn and I don't play in the Old South's in the South's oldest rivalry game of Georgia. I also can't believe that I don't play Auburn every year. I can't believe if you're Alabama, you don't play Tennessee and Auburn every year. I can't believe if you're at Texas A&M, you don't play OU and Texas every year. LSU. I don't know how you don't play Alabama. I don't know how you don't play some of these rivalry games that are consistent with what the SEC has always been. There's a certain nostalgia that belongs in our league that you have to maintain. And everybody can talk about, oh well, we got to get all the schools to all the different campuses. Well, I know what you better do in the SEC. You better play some of these games that are the reason why people in the South hold on to traditions and the pageantry of college football. We better maintain those, and that's why I'm a proponent of the 9 game, 3 permanent schedules. Because yeah, you might get some tougher games. I get it, but you also are maintaining what's best for college football in a day and age where we're throwing all the rules out and doing all that stuff. I mean, I still tune in when the Cowboys play the Commanders, or the Cowboys play the Eagles, or the Cowboys play the Giants, because those games mean something in the NFC East. That's the same thing that you got to have in the SEC. If you lose those games, I mean, I don't, I can't speak for other schools, but I don't know that Mizzou and some of these other schools have strong, ties to our fan base that are going to really attract audiences. I do know us playing Arkansas. I do know us playing Oklahoma, reviving some of that Big 12 rivalry. I think that's good for the state of Missouri. I know us and Oklahoma fight all the time in Kansas City for recruits. So I think us getting a chance to play on the field would be good. So I think that's a positive. And I think, again, the more consistency in teams that we play on a yearly basis helps you kind of see where you're at in the conference.
Yeah, that eight-game format is tough to get behind with the one permanent opponent. But what a good problem to have, though, is so many rivalries and so much interest and trying to figure out where you go from there. Based on what some other conferences are dealing with, this is a blessing, right?
Well, let me ask y'all, could y'all imagine a year where Auburn doesn't play Alabama, or Georgia doesn't play Auburn, or Alabama doesn't play Tennessee?
Yeah, I don't think that's good for college football.
Or Florida doesn't play Georgia?
Yeah. I don't think that.
Like that, is that good for the SEC? I mean, is that good for the SEC?
I don't think it's good for the SEC. I don't think it's good for college football. And I think when kids get recruited by those schools, they want to play in those kind of games. You know, so I think that's something that has to be looked at. But when we started doing the super conferences, and when we got so many teams now in the SEC, so many teams in the Big Ten, when you talk about UCLA and USC coming all the way out to the Big Ten, we knew we were going to lose a little of that. But I do think that we have to do as much as possible to keep some of those rivalries that makes college football really, really special. We have to keep it as consistent as possible. I think you're hurting some fan bases and some schools if you get rid of. Can you imagine no Iron Bowl? You know, like that would be tough.
No.
Well, hey, they say, well, but it's going to happen every 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, so is the Olympics. How's that worked out for the Olympics?
No, I mean, we talked about the differences. Yeah, exactly. No, we talked about the differences with college football and, you know, other professional sports. I would say the first one is tradition and rivalries and those legacies. I mean, that's what makes it so special. Think about the fans of the Bedlam rivalry, having to say goodbye to that potentially with Oklahoma going to the SEC. So there's a lot, unfortunately, that you don't think about when you talk about conference realignment and these TV deals and everything that's going down is you're missing some of that excitement and tradition. But definitely still a good time for the sport.